You're listening to Cinema Geekly, brought to you in association with ThinkGeek. Stuff for smart masses.
You're listening to Who Made Who, a Cinema Geekly Doctor Who podcast, part of the Cinema Geekly Premium podcast. We're going to talk about that in a second, but let's get the intros out of the way. I'm the host of the show, Anthony Lewis.
And I'm the guest on the show, I guess, Ben Knight.
Hopefully Ben won't be a guest. Maybe we can move him from the guest starring role into like co-host at some point.
Become a series regular.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, you could be like Arthur Darvill in during the Matt Smith years of Doctor Who. We can add you to the credits at some point. But yeah, this is part of the Cinema Geekly Premium thing that we are starting. This first episode though is going to be available free to everybody on the regular Cinema Geekly stream. But moving forward, episodes following this one are going to be part of Cinema Geekly Premium. And if you are curious about how to get involved with all of that, you can go to cinemageekly.com/premium or patreon.com/cinemageekly. And I think what we're going to be doing, we're going to be starting things as low as, I think we're going to do it as low as $1 a month is the opening level. And I think we'll give you like 2 weeks of the premium stuff for $1. But I think we're going to do it as low as $5, where you get the content monthly, and it's going to go up from there. People can check out the Patreon page. I believe there's an option where you're going to get access for the entire year and a t-shirt and a bunch of other wacky stuff that we haven't even thought up yet. But this is, in fact, the first episode, and since we're behind a little bit, we're going to try to cover both of the episodes of Doctor Who Series 8 that have aired thus far. Deep Breath and Into the Dalek, I believe, are the first 2 episodes. Before I jump into that, I figured since we have a true Brit on the show, this really should be your show, to be honest with you. I feel like the idiot trying to talk about something that is more culturally relevant to you than it is to me. But
I've only been watching it since I was 5, so it's fine.
Oh boy, that makes it so much worse for me. I've only, I've watched almost everything, and thanks to Hulu Plus, Hulu Plus has almost, it has, at least for Americans, has the most complete collection of classic Who.
Mhm.
I believe they completely skipped one entire year of Colin Baker.
Everyone's so mean to Colin Baker.
There are no episodes for. They have one season of Colin Baker, and I believe his other season is nowhere to be seen. But
Oh, it's the one that's missing Trial of a Time Lord.
oh
Because
yes,
that was the kind of special series. It was the 4 story arcs within sort of one big story arc. I think the reason for that will be a rights issue because it's the one that's been remastered and put out on DVD, I think.
So yeah, to make it seem even more lopsided that I shouldn't be hosting this show, I'll just let you know that for people who haven't been listening to the regular Cinema Geekly podcast, it was Aaron De La Osa who actually got me hooked on this show. He had been watching it for a while and got me to watch it. But unfortunately, because of the way that BBC does things, they do a shorter series, kind of like how in the States HBO or AMC is now doing shorter series. Doctor Who was doing 10 or 11 or 12 episode seasons, and especially with the way the last season with Matt Smith went, I believe they split that season
Yeah.
in 2. And yeah, so as a result, the very first Doctor Who thing I got to watch live as it happened was the 50th anniversary show. Was the first thing I actually got to watch live. That being said, I had gone back and watched everything from Christopher Eccleston onward, and I've been slowly delving into the classic stuff. I watched all of the classic Who that was on Netflix, but that was a very small
Yeah.
amount. They would have like one serial per season, maybe.
It's probably best to, in terms of the old stuff. I mean, unless you get ill or something and you decide you're going to sit and watch everything. If
Right.
you've got that much time on your hands, then fair enough. But I think probably the best thing is to dip back into the old stuff as it becomes relevant. Because I mean,
Yes.
Doctor Who is a labor of love, or it was, I think, when it was rebooted. And Stephen Moffat and obviously Russell T Davies are people who know a lot about that backstory. And yeah, I
Indeed.
mean,
Yeah.
for example, this series, I mean, we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, but Deep Breath references stuff that goes all the way back to the William Hartnell days, the
Hmm.
first Doctor. So um, it
Where,
kind of becomes relevant as we get through it.
so where did you start then with Who? You said when you were 5, so you're
Yeah,
probably going to
that
take
would be
us just a
Colin
little bit.
Baker.
Yep. I
That
was
would be
gonna,
Colin Baker.
which definitely also makes you older than I am, which is okay. And but no, that's fine. So you got to you got to live through the. Oh, I mean, I lived through the Baker eras. I just had no idea that the show existed
Yeah.
at that point. So that and the that also means you lived through the TV movie. Which did you see the
Well,
TV movie when it happened or?
let me say this. I sort of my parents were Tom Baker, Doctor Who era, I guess, and
Mhm.
Peter Davison sort of fell between the two. Colin Baker was me, and it was kind of it was so 80s. I mean, obviously it was mid 80s, but
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
it was camp. It was preposterous in so many ways. But of course, you now see the kind of resonance of the dark side of Colin Baker's Doctor appearing in the new stuff, which a lot of people don't appreciate, I think. Sylvester McCoy, the most underrated Doctor ever, the one that everyone kind of forgets when they
Oh
go
yeah,
through
yeah.
it.
I just forgot him just now, and when as soon as you mentioned him, I'm like, I love Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I watched him back just recently because he was doing the stuff with
yeah.
the Rani,
Yep.
the actress whose name completely escapes me for the moment. And
I'm sure that
there's some good
name will
stuff
get brought
there.
up again as well.
I'd imagine it's going to come up, yeah. But yeah, so the Bonnie Langford and Sophie Aldridge era as well in terms of assistants
Mhm.
and so on. I remember that quite well, but it got a pretty poor reception in the UK, despite it ran for well, a couple of years, I think, 87 to 89, I think.
Yes.
But then
Uh,
Paul McGann's outing.
which I don't blame on Paul McGann. I rather liked Paul McGann. At least when I saw him in the
As the War Doctor.
yes, when I saw the mini episode, the short that they did,
Yeah,
I was like, wow, I had not listened to any of the radio plays or
yeah,
whatever they called them that he did the audio stories.
yeah.
I know that has a fan base too, but I've not heard any of them. But I saw him in that. I was like, wow, that is he's quite good. But um, yeah, I did watch the TV movie, and it really did feel like they were trying to maybe Americanize
Yeah,
the
they
idea,
were trying to sell it to the US audience, and Sylvester McCoy was a little bit cringeworthy in it, and
and he may be the first doctor that I'm aware of who had to regenerate because he was shot by street thugs
by hoodlums, if you
by
will. Yes,
hoodlums. Yes,
um,
uh,
but no, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Paul McGann, he was a pretty good doctor, and the I say the War Doctor, obviously that's the transition episode, but
yeah,
I got such a buzz out of that. Kind of tying in another geek thing was that you had Paul McGann, who had sort of been existed outside of the TV canon at least
yeah,
for such a long time. It was nice to see him brought into the family, as it were.
right,
But then, of course, to have the person who transformed him into the War Doctor be none other than I forgot, her name has now also gone out of my head.
right,
Julia from Hellraiser. Um,
yes,
and she crops up every now and again in BBC stuff. I don't think she's really done anything huge since Hellraiser, but to see her doing that and everything, it kind of tied it all together. I got a lot out of that, and I now accept and embrace Paul McGann as part of the whole affair.
yeah. Yeah, they tied him in quite nicely to everything, and I mean, I think they really kind of had to. They did a kind of an explanation of what happened between Paul McGann and Christopher Eccleston, and tied it into the seventh series arc in
Yeah,
general, and paid it all off. I think quite nicely with the 50th anniversary episode.
yeah,
So yeah, people are like, quit. I'm sure by now people are like, I thought you were going to talk about the new Doctor Who series, not this old stuff. We will, in fact, and I think once this series has run its course, to fill some time in between them, because it will feel like years and years and years between Series 8
Mm.
and Series 9. I'm sure. We might fill it in at some point, talking about older Doctor Who stuff, and things like that, just to keep the conversation going.
There's a lot
Uh,
of callback stuff in the new stuff. I reckon that's going to take quite a while to unpick between 8 and 9.
yes. So yeah, this is post Matt Smith era. Matt Smith is now gone, much to the uh, I guess much to the cries of many people. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes, man. I don't know if you've seen the chart that somebody very smartly put up about how Doctor Who fans deal with regenerations, which is, kind of like a circle, is a vicious circle of not liking the new guy and then kind of warming up to him and then starting to like him and then really like him, and then he regenerates and then you hate the next guy for a little while. And although I will say this, I did not have that feeling with Peter Capaldi at all. I did kind of feel that a little bit when I first started watching with
Mm.
Eccleston. I got used to Eccleston. I don't want to say I was in love with that character or anything like that. He didn't really stick around long enough
Mm.
for me to get attached, but I was kind of getting used to them, and all of a sudden it is a rather jarring change. All of a sudden it's the same character, but a completely different character, kind of all at the same time. And I had a difficult time moving on from Tennant to Matt Smith. I did not think I was going to like Matt Smith at all, and then by the time his run was over, I liked Matt Smith too. That was not an issue with Capaldi. I was excited for him kind of right from the get go, but I already knew of him from the Malcolm
Thick
Tucker
of it.
days.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah. So I was already very excited. So when it happened, it was sad to see one guy go, but I was excited for the next guy. I didn't really need to wait. I thought he was going to be brilliant before he ever spoke a word. And
You're sort of
yeah,
getting through the grief cycle a lot quicker with him.
yes, I did. Yes, it was very, very, very fast. I skipped a few steps. So yeah, that's where we start on this episode. The very first episode of Series 8 is called Deep Breath. So let's run through the story as quickly as humanly possible. It was a little bit longer than your regular Doctor Who episode. It was extended. I don't think it was like double length. I think
It
it
was
was,
76 minutes,
yeah.
which in the UK, because we don't have an ad break every 12 seconds.
Yes.
It's I mean that's a full 76 minutes over here, which is, I think, a normal episode's what, 40. In fact, hang on a minute, I'll tell you,
About
it's
44.
45 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
44, 45.
Yeah.
So yeah, in America it took about 2 hours to watch that episode. Which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but yeah, I understand you find folks pay a little bit extra
Yeah.
somewhere or another, and as a result you don't have to watch commercials
I
on
think we sell it
BBC.
we sell it to the US, Australia, and various other places, and then that pays for it for us now.
There you
So that's
go.
good. It's like Top Gear. You guys can have Jeremy Clarkson. It's fine.
Okay, so here we go. The last thing we saw from the Matt Smith era, post regeneration and Peter Capaldi, the TARDIS was crashing, I do believe, and that is the last thing we saw leading up to this episode, which starts with a T Rex of all things. Ben, in Victorian London, and of course, if you're in Victorian London in Doctor Who during the Stephen Moffat era, uh, that means you're guaranteed a Paternoster gang appearance. Vastra, Strax, and Jenny. They are, yeah, and I think they are the equivalent of what Sherlock Holmes, like that's the joke, is that Sherlock Holmes is based on Vastra, I think,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
at least that's the joke that's supposed to be there, and she is talking with, I guess maybe the the carbon copy of Lestrade, I guess, the dumb police officer who has no idea what's going on. They're trying to contain this scene when the dinosaur regurgitates a TARDIS. Of course, I believe they assume it's the Doctor right away. Some of the dialogue there seemed to suggest weirdly otherwise for about a second. Like, it's a blue box that just came out of a dinosaur that shouldn't be here. Is it the doctor? And they're like, well, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't. Let's not jump to conclusions. I'm like, yes, jump to conclusions. It's
Although, of
Victorian
course,
London.
that is the era of those blue police boxes, of course.
Oh, absolutely. There you
Maybe
go.
that's it.
Quite possibly.
Although how that would end up inside a dinosaur, I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
Strax, of course, goes up to the door and is greeted by the new doctor, attack eyebrows and all, Peter Capaldi. And of course, he is, by the way, according to Wikipedia, he is suffering from post regenerative trauma. I don't know if this is a term that has been that exists within the fan base, but I but I like it. It's like post traumatic stress syndrome. The doctor is suffering from post regenerative trauma. We've seen this a little bit. I believe David Tennant had a bout of this where he didn't quite know
He
who
needed
he was.
tea, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes, yes, he did not quite know who he was at first, and this iteration of the Doctor was in fact having an even tougher time figuring out who was who and who he was and where they all are. Um, of course, that leads us into the beginning of the show, and which, by the way, I think we maybe mentioned, some of the guys mentioned while I was off on the regular Cinema Geekly podcast, the new opening credit scene was actually taken from a fan video
Yeah.
that was very interesting to me, because there are definitely some very talented people out there who kind of make these intros for fun, and lo and behold, one day, I guess everybody keep doing that because you never know when BBC will come knocking at your door, saying we would like to use your. I don't know if you've heard anything, so I don't know if this guy got paid for his work or if he worked on the intro himself, or if they just
Uh,
said we're going to use this idea that you did.
the BBC, everything has to be just so at the BBC, so he'll have been paid, I'm sure. But
Well, that's excellent.
it's yeah, it's good. I have to say though, it kind of gets kind of jumped into it before we got to the end of the plot. But the snag for me right from the start was that I actually thought, from the high times of the Mill and Cardiff and their best output in terms of CG, I actually thought this one started pretty poorly CG wise.
Oh, absolutely. If you've ever seen the video that it's based off of as well, it's not.
Yeah.
There are a couple other people out there. I've always thought the TARDIS does not look as good as it could look
Mm,
graphically in these intros. For some reason, it always looks kind of very cartoony looking. Like it doesn't quite look like a real wooden box to me. And I've seen people on YouTube who have made very up close models that look very realistic. And I'm just trying to figure out why these guys can manage it and
it's,
BBC can't for some reason.
it is weird. Yeah.
But once it goes flying into that clock and it sort of gets all ethereal with planets flying by, it looks pretty good after that.
Yeah.
And the very beginning with the kind of the clock pieces and stuff, that looks pretty nice as well. But that little middle in the end there, yeah, that just kind of sticks out to me.
Mm,
So post opening credits, the Doctor is still having a very difficult time, kind of gathering his bearings. Meanwhile, this is the beginning of the kind of the subplot here for Clara. She is having a very difficult time, even though she's aware that the Doctor regenerates and he changes his face. She's having a very difficult time confronting the idea that he's new but looks old, and this is when people start questioning, whether what she thought this relationship was. Did she think the Matt Smith Doctor was her boyfriend?
mm.
Like this. Do you know how old this guy is? It's like, maybe did you ever think he was doing that? For you to help fit in better. They kind of raised some questions like this, but a lot of it was, and we'll talk about this as soon as we get through the plot. But I think Claire was not just standing in for the regular human viewers. I
No.
think I get the feeling she was standing in for a very specific subset of viewers
Yeah.
that were watching this show, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Eventually, the Doctor does come to his senses a little bit, and of course, he speaks dinosaur, so he's able to kind of understand the T-Rex, who is feeling a little lost at the moment, being stuck in the middle of Victorian London with people looking at it from all corners. And I think he is on his way to help the T-Rex when it kind of suddenly combusts. It bursts into flames. It dies. And he kind of goes on the case, completely dismissive of Clara and the Paternoster gang entirely, and is just going off doing his own thing, probably not in his right mind either. Well, as close to his right mind as he ever is. Um, but he's not in his right mind, obviously. So you've kind of got the Paternoster gang and the Doctor kind of approaching this from two completely different perspectives. Of course, the Doctor and the Clara eventually do sort of come together at some point, and the culprit in this whole thing is a robot who wants to make himself a man. It's the for people who haven't seen it, it's the I guess they're I don't know how they really framed it in the story, but they're the clockwork robots that are related to the clockwork robots, I guess, in the David Tennant episode, "The Girl in the Fireplace."
Yeah.
Their ship that they crash landed on Earth on a very very long time ago was
The
the
SS Madame de Pompadour.
yes, the sister ship is the one in this episode, I believe, the
Hmm.
Marie Antoinette. So they were related. In fact, in Peter Capaldi spends a lot of time trying to figure out where he's seen all of this before, and plays a couple of those moments for comedy as well, where it's very obvious what it's from, and he's like, "Yeah, it's not coming to me." I mean, he even has a point as well where he references the character he played. I guess it's a reference. It's a very slickly put in there reference to the character he played in the Fires of Pompeii,
Yes.
where he feels like he's seen the face before. He's not sure where the face has come from, but he feels like
Yeah.
maybe he's trying to tell himself something. Um, of course, the Doctor and Clara and the Paternoster gang, all kind of uh, are figuring out the Clockwork Robots scheme here, which is that they've been stuck on Earth a very very long time, and they've started incorporating human pieces onto their bodies to become more and more human, and as a result, they've also kind of incorporated some of our bad humany habits and beliefs and things like that as well. And this crazy robot man is convinced that he needs to get to the promised land. Um, they don't go any further than that, but later on in the episode, the character he meets does take us that one step further a little bit. But yeah, he this is what he is looking for, and he's killing people, he's killing animals, he's anything that they can find to get the pieces they need. Much like in The Girl in the Fireplace,
Yeah.
it's pretty much how it all works. Um, of course, this cannot stand for too much longer. Eventually it comes down to, of course, it comes down to the Doctor and this clockwork robot, and they have a very great moment where the Doctor is chastising him about how many times he's replaced these parts. It's like, is there anything of the real you even left anymore? And he's doing this while holding up something to show him the reflection. But the shot is great because it has, you can see Capaldi's face on the other end. And as he's saying this, he gets this look on his face where he kind of suddenly realizes that I'm talking about myself as well, kind of. Is there anything left of the person I was when I started all of this? Have I changed so many times? Am I not the person anymore? And ultimately, what it boils down to is uh, the clockwork robot thinks that the Doctor can help him by killing him, and what they don't show us is what exactly happens. We see the clockwork robot dies, but we do not know if the clockwork robot killed himself or if the Doctor is the one who committed the deed.
Did he fall or was he pushed? Yeah.
Yes, that is going, and that may be a question they're probably going to be asking the whole series. In fact, we shall see. I can't imagine they would leave a question that large open and not use it going forward. So,
Well, I mean, and they highlighted the question as well. The
indeed.
character who we will come back to, I'm sure. It's you might think sounds almost as if she's evidence gathering, but anyway.
And at the end of this episode, we are still left with Clara, who, after going through this ordeal, is still not certain this is the Doctor she knows, and she's not sure if she likes this person. Um, she's still willing to travel with him, at least back to Earth, but she certainly seems very very wary as to whether or not this is the same person or if she likes him anymore. And that is, of course, I guess the whole main point of this episode, I feel anyway, was when she exited the TARDIS and got a call from the 11th ish Doctor. I mean, the numbers are very very strange now as to which number any one doctor is. But I'm talking about the Matt Smith doctor.
Yeah.
Calls her, and in some ways this cameo felt incredibly transparent to me, and in other ways I thought it was very well done. He calls her from Trenzalore, and they tie it back to the scene in Matt Smith's last episode when Clara's approaching the TARDIS and she sees the phone hanging there and just hangs it back up before she goes in. And they tie that in quite nicely. That's the moment where Matt Smith's doctor calls her before he goes into the TARDIS to get ready to take his new form. And basically, he's like, it's me. I'm in there, but he's going to need help. He's more terrified than you are. You've got to help him. Do this as a favor from me. And then Clara and Capaldi's doctor have a very nice moment where where she kind of does see it at the end, and they kind of go on their merry way, and that's the end of the episode. What Before we start digging into that real quick, what did you think of Capaldi in general?
Well, like you, I've got his background with, well, not just the thick of it, but other stuff as well. And there is that kind of constant thing where you're expecting him to start going all Malcolm Tucker. But once you get over that, I think
Right.
I wonder if there seems to me quite a lot of deliberate references, maybe even also in terms of the post regeneration trauma thing. I wonder if they're referencing directly the fact that he is effectively, post war doctor.
Right.
He's the recovering doctor, isn't he?
Yes.
And I kind of wonder if that's what Matt Smith's references were about as well, and so on. So I'm buying it by the time of the first episode. It's again, like you, not such a huge jump as perhaps has been done in the past.
As as
You,
somebody, oh, go ahead, continue.
when I was going to say, I mean, whenever there's a regeneration, certainly since the reboot, you do kind of, I don't know. Some people might like the drama of the confusion and the realization and everything. I'm kind of old school with it. I just kind of like get up and get on with it. Um,
Right, right, right.
but but they do that in this episode. In fairness,
Now, as somebody who's a little bit more versed in the Hooniverse, I guess is a good term as any to use, I guess.
you're setting me up for hate mail here. But go on.
No, no. I have not, unfortunately, I've not gotten far enough through the classic Who. I've not seen enough regeneration episodes or post regeneration episodes. Has there ever been a regeneration episode where they referenced the previous Doctor so heavily?
Um,
Because there was a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, there has actually. The Was it the jump from Peter Davison to Colin Baker? I seem to remember. It's been a long time since I saw that, but I seem to remember there was quite a lot of reference to that. There was sort of reference to the clothes as well, particularly, which was kind of it was some good comedy moments because you go from the ridiculously dressed Peter Davison to the completely differently but equally ridiculously dressed
Colin
Colin
Baker.
Baker.
Yes.
So yeah, there's been bits of it, and the character. I mean, this is the thing about Doctor Who is even when it's been low budget Saturday evening filler on the BBC, which it was for some of its life,
Right.
there was always, because of the writing underpinning it, there was always sort of nods back to other things, and of course we've had the multi-Doctor episodes, as I
Mhm.
call them. And and all of those reference bits out of each other's characters and so on. So yeah, it's not a new thing. I think they're just enjoying experimenting with it in this series.
Yeah, the thing that really stuck out to me the most in this episode, and maybe it's just a cynical feeling on my part, but it did feel, and it's the only thing that kind of drags down the episode for me in any way,
Mm.
is that I think they kind of had, I mean, and again, it just might be me being cynical, but I sort of got this vibe that they're like, okay, we've got this big fan base, a fan base that we have maybe never had this size, or or it's been a long time since we've had a fan base this big, and for better or for worse, a lot of those fans kind of hopped on during the
Yeah.
Tennant and especially the Smith years, were a younger girl audience that were
Mhm.
like, this guy. I mean, my 11-year-old loves this show, but she got in because she thought Matt Smith was adorable. That's where she, and that's an 11-year-old girl's perspective on things. I get that, and it's totally fine. And I don't behoove people for enjoying the show because of that reason, as long as they tend to stick around because it's actually a good show. Like they get some substance out of it, and it's not all shallow. And I'm not saying all of the fans that liked Matt Smith because they thought he was cute or whatever, and became big fans of the show through that conduit. I'm not saying that makes them bad fans or anything like that, but I am getting the feeling that, at least from my perspective, the people who put this episode together really felt like they might be in trouble by casting an older person to play the Doctor,
Oh,
because
definitely. Yeah.
like I said earlier, Clara and usually all of the companions kind of serve as like this channel for you to experience things with this alien that they're hanging out with. They're the
Mm.
human component that you relate to. But in this, I really felt like she was more representing those people that kind of came onto the show in that regard. They're like, look, I know he's not this good-looking guy anymore, but and like I said, that's why I sort of felt like the Matt Smith cameo was in some ways really clever, but in a lot of ways it felt like the old cute doctor saying like, "Please, just give this guy a chance, just
I,
stick with
I
the
think that's
show."
yeah. I think that's exactly what that was.
I mean, they
The
they
BBC does not have a good history of of the way it deals with older actors
right.
and things like that. And do you know what? I can probably, given time, think of 100 examples of TV shows where they've had to do something like that. And this is the most gratuitous example
Yeah.
of a previous actor effectively being the
I mean, he's basically begging them.
directly addressing
Yes.
look, to hell with the fourth wall, guys, bear with this, we're going to get through it,
Yeah.
this guy's okay.
He's a very good actor. He's look, looks aren't everything. Yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy the show. Yeah, I mean they didn't quite go that far, but I mean it was kind of hidden in plain sight. It really
Yeah.
kind of felt like, please, please, please don't leave. We'll come up with some really cool Capaldi merch at Hot Topic. Just keep stick with it. We promise you. I mean, obviously people like us did not need convincing, but I mean,
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, though. Is okay, yeah, that applies to the kids.
mhm,
The sort of yeah, come for the eye candy, stay for the stories.
right.
But actually, I don't know. I think maybe
My 11 my 11-year-old is still watching it every week. She's watched the last 2 weeks and she likes the show just as much. I mean, she's like I miss Matt Smith, and she's like, I'll admit I like it because I thought he was cute. I had like a crush on him and stuff. It's just, but she's like, look, she's like, good shows are good shows.
But
But
did you not feel that actually did you I don't know that viewers like to be reassured whatever their age is. And
sometimes,
I
yeah, yeah, I agree.
and I yeah, and I do kind of wonder whether I don't know, maybe that reassurance maybe I mean the fact we all noticed it, I guess it's fairly obvious, but the fact we all noticed it, maybe we were sort of we were wanting the reassurance secretly.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
or I think maybe in my case, I was already on board before
Mhm.
he said the first line of dialogue. So maybe I just noticed it more because I was already accepting. I didn't
Mm.
need any reassurance. And then I noticed that they were reassuring people. And it became very obvious to me. Like, normally I needed some reassurance when David Tennant regenerated because I grew to love that guy so much
Yeah.
that when it changed over to Matt Smith and he was a very different, played it very differently. I needed a little bit of reassurance. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to like this guy.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and I mean, eventually it did work, but yeah, I wasn't feeling it at that time. So yeah, it could be a combination of those things,
Mhm.
for sure. Was there anything else that stood out to you in the episode? Any little treasures that were hidden in there, or any particular performances or things that you thought were good?
Yeah, well, I think Peter Ferdinando, he's the actor who played. I think he's credited as Half Face Man.
Yes.
So the robot, he's kind of it's odd. He sort of appeared in little bits and bobs of stuff over here. He was in something called A Field in England, which I think had a director in common with somewhere down the line in Doctor Who as well. I actually thought he was quite good. They're quite good at finding slightly sinister people in
Yes.
in Doctor Who, and he played sinister very well without overdoing it. I mean, if you're playing a sort of Clockwork Borg, um, you know,
Right.
you've got to be able to carry that with a degree of conviction for a show that has the adult audience that Doctor Who has. So
That would be such a good segue also into the second episode. Unfortunately, the first episode into this, and I've already royally screwed up, which is incredible. It's hard to believe if anyone's ever
uh,
listened to a Cinema Geekly podcast. But I completely forgot to mention maybe one of the most important plot points of that entire first
the
episode
beginning of the mile-and-a-half long story arc that is the
is
signature of Stephen Moffat.
indeed our half-faced clockwork robot man wakes up after his death to be met by a woman who calls herself Missy and tells him that he's done it. He has reached paradise. He's reached heaven. Ben Knight.
and and she hopes that her boyfriend wasn't too mean to him.
Yes, and she talked about how she likes his accent. Maybe she'll keep it and things like that. Very vague little things tossed out to the audience that, of course, have raised about 1.5 million questions.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about that real quick after we talk about the second episode.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention I really liked. Uh, Despite who Clara was representing in this episode, I kind of liked what they did with her.
Yeah.
Moffat's kind of signature, at least with Doctor Who for the most part, is that the women are kind of a mystery to be solved by the Doctor, and that usually, I mean, with Amy Pond, I mean, there obviously was a big mystery there, but it didn't necessarily center specifically around her.
Hmm.
It was really more about the River Song character, but with Clara, I mean, they spent an entire season. She's a mystery the Doctor has to figure out, and she was sort of a plot point for the whole series and never really got to be a character.
I think maybe it's well, is it controversial that I don't know, it probably is that I think Russell T Davies for being responsible for the reboot and the kind of the new brand of Doctor Who and everything else.
Right.
People are split on Russell Davies. They always have been, I guess, but
Hmm.
probably since Queer as Folk, actually, long before Doctor Who. But with him, obviously, Billy Piper playing Rose Tyler, she was a very, very strong character,
Yeah.
and Billy Piper was an absolute revelation to people in Britain who remember her as a little, teenage pop star and so on.
Yes.
It could just bizarre seeing that. But anyway, uh, but actually, this is one of the things that Stephen Moffat truly brought to this show, which is these not just the sort of the girls who can keep up, which is what Russell Davies and all of his predecessors did,
Hmm.
or the ones who were just there to scream like, well, I say like Bonnie Langford and people like that.
Right.
But she's another one of Moffat's strong storyline driving female characters, and actually, I think she's by far and away the most interesting of the assistants. River Song is, as far as I'm concerned, she's sort of like the queen of the whole franchise now. She was such an awesomely written character and
Agreed.
so brilliantly played. I could cheerfully, if there's a spin-off, I would cheerfully watch that with her. Um,
Yeah.
but
If you could stick through Arrow a bit longer, Ben, she's in there with John Barrowman as well on Arrow. So
oh, and that's kind of ruined it, John Barron. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But Clara Oswald is right from her first appearances. Um, she's intriguing, and I think
yeah,
this episode, yeah, you're right. She's there to serve a sort of narrative purpose for the transition. But yeah,
she got to be a little
she's
bit more of a person this time. I feel like it was
yeah.
like her existence. And while I liked a lot what the story they did with her and being the impossible girl and everything, I really enjoyed that. But I mean, that was kind of like that's who she is. She's the impossible girl, and this time she kind of just got to be, Clara Oswald, who has some thoughts and some feelings about, this new person that she's having to deal with and her struggle trying to accept somebody who's vastly different than what she was expecting. And I really like that. I like that they've maybe expanded on her a little bit. I enjoyed that.
And her love interest is going to be, I would hazard a guess, a significant part of the story going forward because of, well, possibly partly because of the tween stroke teen factor in terms of the audience, but also because there's obviously a reference in his surname to a surname in the next episode. But I think, yeah, she's there for a purpose, and also a kind of geeky thing as well is it just me who really loves Clara's theme
Yeah, no,
in the
I
music
like it too.
score? I don't know why.
Yeah,
I actually think it's one of the best sort of stirring and kind of
Yeah,
dramatically effective pieces of music since the reboot actually.
that's one of my things as well that we don't get to talk about it nearly enough on the Cinema Geekly podcast. I'm a big like classical music score soundtrack type person as well, and if I really get in to a show, I usually get way in. Like I'm listening to the
Hmm.
soundtracks, and me and my daughter recently watched the last Doctor Who at the Proms, which was
That
just
was awesome. Yeah.
lots of fun. Just tons of fun, and we desperately wished we lived at some place where they took something as cool as that and treated it like that. There's not a lot of shows on American TV where they would ever do anything remotely close to something like that, and it just seemed like the most fun. And yeah, so I mean that's one of my things as well. I'm way into that. We don't get to talk about it too much though. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a chance to play good cop here. We're gonna rate this episode on our infamous geeky glasses scale.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm not going to rate it poorly, but I mean, for me, it was it kind of felt like most origin story type. I mean, it obviously wasn't an origin story, but as far as Doctor Who goes, a
Hmm.
post regeneration episode is always kind of like an origin story in so much as that they're exploring who the new character is. So as far as that goes, it was kind of like a standard episode where the story kind of exists to build to what the big arc is going to be, and
Yeah.
most of the time was spent on you discovering who the new doctor is. So I don't know, maybe this is gonna make me bad cup, I don't know, but I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5. I think that's where I'm gonna make my stand.
Hmm. Um, I kind of agree with just about everything you said about that. I'm gonna, do you know, I'm gonna go slightly lower, and I'm gonna go for this
Wow.
reason. Yeah, and I
Like,
kind of feel bad about it, but I thought this through. I'm setting myself up for hate mail now.
yeah, I guess.
I'm gonna say maybe I'm gonna say three because one thing that Moffat does that does annoy me. Okay, I like the big story arcs. I like the nods backwards and forwards to various things, and I guess if it's a sort of chronologically based drama series, then that's important. But
Yes.
these huge story arcs and all of this attention to detail. But the problem is that they reuse, they borrow so heavily sometimes on stuff that they've done, that I kind of feel sometimes if you're rebooting the Doctor, you don't want to be completely thrown out of your comfort zone in terms of the narrative. But equally,
Right.
I just think that I kind of wanted a little bit more from it, and I don't know why.
I mean, it did feel a
It
little
all,
lacking in some
yeah.
ways. Yeah.
I mean, you come away from the end of it, and yeah, I think your reaction's right. You sort of go, okay, all right, and then a little bit later, you're like, I wonder what the deal is with this character at the end there. And you do start to go. I mean, I went back and watched The Girl in the Fireplace after this show,
Right.
which incidentally was a brilliant episode. I'd kind of forgotten how good it was.
Agreed. That's one
Um,
of the jumping in points when I try to when people say what episode, if I just jump in blind, it's like that or Blink
but
or
that's
usually
but
the
that's the
jumping
problem.
episodes.
Is I then went, and this is what pissed me off about it, is I then looking into the Missy character, went back to Nightmare in Silver,
Hmm.
which I guess we'll talk about in due course, which I think is probably where her character comes from. But anyway, I went back and watched that, and I then started to think about how much they'd ripped off from the Borg from Star Trek. I mean, it really
Right.
is a direct pull to the point where the guy has what are basically nanoprobes that he assimilates the Doctor with.
Right.
And I kind of thought, yeah, and now we're with the a mechanical guy who dismantles bits of people, kind of like the Cybermen too as well. And I just kind of, it all just felt a little bit. I was kind of longing for a Dalek, ironically, at that point, which
Uh,
is outrageous, but
right. Well, I mean, we do have to see them, I believe, contractually once the season's
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Which you know what, if done right, and we're going to talk about it because I think maybe they I thought they did a good job with their Dalek episode this
They
season. So
finally found a new angle on the Daleks. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So Ben is the bad cop in this scenario, which is nice for a change. Are you giving it a 3 then instead of a
I'm
three and a
giving it
half?
a three. I'm going to
Okay.
let my British accent on an American show give me away as the villain and give it a three.
Okay, so that is the first episode. We're going to jump right into episode 2, which I believe has been retitled to Who Trek into Daleks. That I look that I am positive that
In a
somebody.
Dalek as well.
I'm
Don't forget that's the other title.
Yes, I am positive that somebody consciously wrote in at least a couple of Star Trek references. That they have to be. But as a Star Trek fan, I see them everywhere.
Yeah, me too.
So no, no. Episode 2 is called Into the Dalek. So let's talk about that real quick. It starts out with a rebel fighter, a rebel for whom I do not know. But it is a rebel fighter, and they are under attack by the Daleks. It's the I believe the pilot who they do name. Her name is Journey Blue, and she has a brother whom I do not know if they named. She may have mentioned his name, but I did not catch it. But the Dalek ship is going to destroy them. She is about to die when the TARDIS I just jumped all over my words. Materializes over top of Journey Blue and her ship. The Doctor saves her life. She is not overly excited about it, and he doesn't seem particularly too excited that he's also saved her either. She seems quite upset that he just saved her life. But there was an interesting exchange between the two of them. She then has the Doctor take her back to the Aristotle, which is the Rebel command ship, where she meets her uncle, who is the colonel, the person in charge. An interesting twist here, Ben. He thanks the Doctor for saving Journey, but he's like, "Look, you could be a Dalek spy though, so you
And now
know,
I'm going to kill you.
yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
have to kill you. I mean, yes, you saved her, but this could just be an elaborate plan. We're gonna have to kill you." Journey, however, tries to convince them otherwise. She says he's a doctor and maybe he can help their patient, who turns out to be a Dalek who they found floating out in space, who's apparently a good Dalek. He seems very intent on stopping his fellow Daleks.
Hmm.
Um, we are then shipped back to Earth, where we are introduced to Danny Pink, and I am now convinced that we are maybe 2 or 3 colors away. And Quentin Tarantino directing an episode of Doctor Who. We have a Reservoir Dogs themed episode, perhaps, of Doctor Who. We shall see. If we start meeting somebody named like Yellow and White, and yeah, we're in trouble. But Danny Pink is a veteran of the Afghan War, who has just started teaching mathematics at Coal Hill High School, which is ironically enough where Claire Oswald is also teaching. And of course, they run into each other, and he is awkward around her. But she kind of works around that, sets up a date between the two of them, and just about before she's about to take off for the day and get ready for her date later with Mr. Pink, she hops into a closet and runs into the Doctor, who is bringing her with him back to the Aristotle. Because apparently, and I really like this line, she's the Doctor's carer. She cares, so he does not
I
have to.
I thought comedy moment of the show there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was brilliant.
I loved it. That was great, and it really does speak to Capaldi's character,
Oh
who
yeah.
is not quite as dark as the trailers made it seem, but he is definitely a much darker version compared to Matt Smith or David Tennant or even Eccleston, who was
I was about to say he's got a bit of the Eccleston about him. He's got a bit of the later Colin Baker about him.
a lot of people are
A
saying
little of the Tom
Pertwee as
Baker.
well. A lot of people are saying Pertwee
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
absolutely. Pertwee was just a strange doctor. So
It
it's
was.
what happens when you take away the driving influence of a character,
Yes.
and the entire basis of it, and simply have a weird man in a coat who knows stuff.
Yeah.
Um, very weird. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, back to
Conti-
where we were. Sorry.
Continuing on, the Doctor and Clara are about to take a fantastic voyage into the Dalek, and which, by the way, I mean that literally. Just like in Fantastic Voyage, they are shrunk down and sent inside the Dalek, which is awesome, by the way.
It was the film Inner Space done with a Dalek. Is what this was.
Yes. So they go inside this. They go inside this Dalek in an attempt to repair it. There is something wrong with it, and the Doctor is very intrigued by the possibility of there being a good Dalek. So they kind of begin this journey through the Dalek to try to get to the core of the problem. And at one point, I mean, this man was going to die anyway. When they're trying to rappel down into the Dalek, it sets off some Dalek antibodies, I guess, that come after them. And while this man was going to die, it did seem kind of jarring for the Doctor to essentially, use him. Like, he knows he's going to die, so I'm just going to use this opportunity to figure out where they're dropping this person, because it's going to be the safest place for us to be is where all the dead things are. And that did feel kind of very jarring. Like, it never felt like I kind of felt like in that moment that like if it were Matt Smith, he would try to do everything within his power to save that person.
It
And
was the way he did it as well because
absolutely,
in again I'm kind of speaking since reboot, but since the reboot, whenever somebody perished in connection to the Doctor,
yeah,
he was there and would there was sort of reassurance but honesty. It was,
yeah.
yes, you're going to die, but um, and here
This guy was
he
just like,
lied to him. He
yeah,
out and out lied to him, and
and then
that possibly brought about his death.
and then more amazingly, so he was just matter of factly, he was like he was going to die anyway.
Mm,
And I was just like, wow. I mean, it is very different and in a very good way.
mm.
Because shows need a freshening up, and I don't think he's a bad person, but that is the question. That is one of the questions they're asking. That people saw the trailer for the show. This is the episode where he says, "Clara, be my pal. Tell me, am I a good man?" And she does not know. But and we'll talk about that. That's near the end of the episode as well. But eventually, they do get to the heart of the problem. There is a radiation leak and they fix it. And as one could imagine, it was the radiation leak that was making the Dalek behave the way he was. There's this key point. The Dalek was suffering from this radiation leak, and while floating in space, he saw the birth of a star, and it made him think very differently about things. It made him change his viewpoint on how he saw things. But of course, he was also suffering from radiation poisoning. And when the Doctor fixed it, he just went back to being a good old exterminate everybody Dalek that isn't a Dalek. And the Doctor was like, at this point, he had given up hope. He's like, there's no way we can, you know, there is no such thing as a good Dalek. I thought maybe there could be, but there isn't. There never could have been.
The only good Dalek is a dead Dalek.
There you go. Yes. And Clara, of course, comes to his aid, and he's like, "Hey, remember earlier on when we were way up there? He said this is like the worst part of the Dalek, where all of the memories are stored, and they just cuts out all of the stuff that could possibly make him decent."
Mhm.
And she's just like, "Why can't we just go up there and reactivate some of those things and see what happens?" Uh,
She's good at the lateral thought, is Clara.
yes, yes, and in a classic Doctor Who fashion, he develops a plan, which is you go do something clever, think about what that's going to be, and then I'm going to go do something that I don't know what it is yet, but I will do it, and it will be brilliant, and it will solve all of our problems.
And
Uh,
because of his charisma and ability to do that, of
yeah,
course, somebody else dies. They
of course,
voluntarily give up their life in order to have Clara and Journey Blue
yes,
reach the memory core. So that's another on the death tally. This Doctor, and again, I don't
it's
think it's
racking them up.
coincidental. Yeah, he's racking them up since the War Doctor, and I think that's probably not a coincidence.
But this person who dies wakes up in Missy
Hmm.
Land, and
Yeah,
she is once again greeted by Missy. Welcome to paradise, young lady. But that is the only glimpse of it we get in this episode. It is not paid nearly as much attention to, or put in as nearly an important spot. It's put in the spot of, hey, remember this thing from the last episode? Yes, keep remembering that. It's going to be important later on as we go along. So they put it in that position, but that was fine. It keeps that character and that place fresh in people's minds, so they don't forget about it too much moving forward. Of course, Clara and Journey get to the memory center, reactivate the proper memories, and one of the scenes that was the best, maybe in the whole episode for me, is the Doctor. His plan is to climb up to where the actual Dalek is, the organism inside of the machine. So you've got this little Doctor standing in front of this gigantic Dalek.
which
And
could have been awful, but actually,
yes,
I think they got away with it.
yeah, I think they made it look pretty decent. And
Yeah.
the Doctor, Clara is reactivating these memories, but it does not seem to be triggering enough of an effect for the Doctor's liking. So he decides it would be smart to just strip some wires and then just plug himself directly into the Dalek. Now, of course, we already mentioned the Star Trek references. There was a moment early on where Clara asks the Doctor where they're going, and he goes into darkness, which
Mhm.
I'm sorry, they just came out with a Star Trek Into Darkness movie not that long ago. It could just be an
Yeah.
offhanded reference, but
Were
with
you
the
expecting him when he plugged himself in? Were you expecting him when the Dalek was saying, what are you doing? To say, must be something you assimilated.
yes, well, I'm like, look, maybe you could overlook that. It's just a phrase that they're using that just happens to be in the title of the
Hmm.
last Star Trek movie. But when he's talking to the Dalek, and the Dalek not once but twice says, "Resistance is futile."
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just like, that's gotta
yeah.
come on, you guys.
This is where we do get the hate mail though, because then people will say, "You do realise that the Borg was not an invention of Star Trek: The Next Generation at all. In actual fact, etc."
Well, I was just expecting for people to be like, no, they'd never do that. If you've read the Doctor Who Star Trek The Next Generation crossover comics, you know it would
Uh-huh.
be the
Yeah.
Cybermen who teamed with the Borg and not the Daleks, you idiots.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, of course, the Doctor does this. He plugs himself in to the Dalek, and the Dalek sees into his soul and sees all of this stuff. And he's mentioned, the Dalek is saying all of these things he sees. He's seeing beauty and divinity. And then the Dalek says he sees hatred, and he sees how much the Doctor hates the Daleks. And the Doctor, of course, gave this speech about how he didn't really became he really wasn't the person he is now until he went to Skaro as the first incarnation of the Doctor. And the first time he met the Doctor, it wasn't until that moment that he kind of became the person he was going to be forever. And
Which was like episode 2 of the first Doctor.
yes,
But anyway.
so the Dalek sees it. He sees all that hatred, and that's how he turns the Dalek good. Essentially, by not really turning him good, he shows him his hatred, and the Dalek is like, he's like, yes, that. He's like, I have to kill all the Daleks. I have to destroy all the Daleks. And Peter Capaldi's Doctor is just heartbroken at this. He's like, this is not what I wanted you to see. This is not what I wanted you to be. And he's kind of realizing that this is kind of who he is. And, at the end of the day, yes, he did turn the Dalek, but not really all that good. He kind of made the Dalek more like the worst sides of his personality. And of course, there is the scene near the end, which I think may be the most, at least given the limited Dalek episodes I've seen, might be the best dramatic performance from a remote control that I've ever seen. Where he is staring at the Doctor and he's like, you are a good Dalek. And he has they turn him around in such a fashion that it just, you could feel like he's just glaring at him as he's turning around to walk away. It was almost like the Dalek version of dropping the microphone.
Which,
After,
yeah, but the problem is, you see, I'm going to be bad cop again, is the fact that they've used that damn situation already.
where he's like, you would make a very good Dalek, or
Yeah,
have done
exactly. There was the line was, you would make a very good Dalek,
right,
and I can't for the life of me remember. I think it was Eccleston's Doctor, so
right.
a little while back, but still they've used it. Although it is still the best burn for
Oh
the
yeah,
Doctor, clearly.
absolutely. There's no way to get under his skin better than to be like,
Yeah.
you are just as good at being us as we are as being us. Well, I mean, there was that line. I think it was maybe in one of the Matt Smith episodes or whatever, where he's like, I'm repulsed by you. It's like you find hatred beautiful, and they're like, maybe that's why we can never get rid of you. You
Yeah, yeah.
can't get rid of something we find so beautiful, and because you hate us so much. So yeah, I mean they've totally used that a bunch of times, but it's almost always effective. It's like, yeah, I know they've kind of said that, but boy, is it really true though? And they kind of hammer it home. That is one of his deep seated flaws is that he really does hate those guys. And yeah, I thought it was a really well done from that perspective. I think it was really well done. And they of course this is the new Doctor, so he's not like, okay, everybody, great adventure this week. Let's shake hands, give everybody hugs. I hope we get to see each other again in some time or space. All right, goodbye. Instead he's just like, I'm out of here. He's the Dalek's like, you're
Yeah,
a Dalek, and he's like, oh, okay. He just walks out and they're like,
yeah.
was that
Check,
goodbye?
please.
They're like, was that goodbye? And he's like, yep, I'm sure yep, that's goodbye. See you guys
I've
later.
I've
You know what I mean?
I've found the because I'm that guy. Doctor Who series 27, episode 6, called "Unimaginatively Enough Dalek,"
Yes.
and I found the line. So the Doctor, this is Eccleston. The Daleks have failed. Now, why don't you finish the job and make the Daleks extinct? Rid the universe of your filth. Why don't you just die? To which the Dalek, a bit of a pause, you would make a good Dalek. And then in the same episode, the Dalek says, I'm alone in the universe. Yep, with a little smile from the Doctor.
Hmm.
So are you. The smile
Yes.
disappears. We are the same. Doctor kicks off, basically. Um, and
Yeah.
then, yeah, so I'm not. No, wait, maybe we are. You're right. Yeah, okay, you've got a good point because I know what to do. I know what should happen. I know what you deserve. Sadistic grin, it says in the script. Exterminate, at which point he tortures the Dalek, basically. The Dalek screams, have pity. Doctor says, why should I? You never did. So there's this kind of. I mean, it goes back a lot further than the reboot, but yeah,
Right.
this it
Playing on a
is like
very similar
that is
theme.
the big emotional pull for the Doctor, isn't it? Plus, also the whole kind of genocide point. Let's not
Yeah,
skip
yeah,
over that.
yeah. Try not to brush over that too much.
Yeah, yeah,
It does
yeah.
kind of get lost, doesn't it, in this whole thing? It's like we're really focusing on how much, but at the end of the day, yes, he did kill an awful lot of them.
Mm.
And no matter how you slice it, either through using the moment or either through uh, pocket universing Gallifrey, and they all
Mhm.
kind of crossfire into each other and kill each other. So either way, no matter how you slice it, he is kind of responsible for a lot of Dalek death for sure.
Mm.
Okay, so they after the very brief goodbyes, the Doctor returns Clara back to her office moments after she left. Um, and this is where she kind of answers his question about whether or not he's a good man. She says she's still not sure, but that he's trying to be, and she thinks that that's what the point is. That's as long as you're giving the effort to be good, that's what counts. But we shall see how well that holds up going forward. Of course, she leaves the office, bumps into to Danny Pink, who notices that she has changed clothes, which she tries to.
That's the most unrealistic part of a whole episode, which features people being shrunk in the future to fit inside a fictitious robot.
But like
Is the
you're
fact that the guy at the primary school goes, "Have you got changed?"
yeah, you
That
are
this
you.
never happens.
Yes, right. Um, the but and an interesting piece. I guess we should mention this because it goes back to your War Doctor, the theory you had
Mhm.
about that going in there. Before they left, Journey Blue wanted to come with,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Look, if you weren't a soldier, maybe, but you're a soldier. No, no thanks."
I was screaming at the fucking television, going, "That's Zoe Ashton. She's awesome. You need her in your TARDIS." But he wasn't having it. I don't know if you guys have any of the other stuff that she does. She's a comedian and she does what's the TV show she does? Fresh Meat, which is
Yeah,
on Channel 4 in the UK.
very
I
very vaguely aware, but
oh,
unfortunately not.
she's brilliant. She's
but
brilliant.
but
But
not
anyway,
overly
sorry.
so. So yeah, she bumps into Danny Pink, and he thought maybe that him being an ex-soldier might put Claire off, and she said it doesn't really bother him, or it doesn't bother her. She's like, but it's very saying, she's very much saying it doesn't bother me, but I know somebody who it does bother. I hope you don't end up in the TARDIS with me, which obviously they were going to, I believe, at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
They're very clearly, and that will obviously set up some interesting situations as well. But and so anything stand out to you in particular in this episode?
This is the episode, I guess, already that starts people thinking about the big story arc because although less is more with Michelle Gomez, Missy, the gatekeeper, whatever you want to call her.
Yep.
The it's got everyone's brains going and this is what Moffat loves doing. So the crack through which the radiation is coming inside the Dalek. I've heard people. I don't agree with this actually. I think this is nonsense, but it's the sort of thing
Mm.
people jump at.
The
And
crack in
going,
the
oh,
wall,
that's
yes.
like the crack in the wall. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, it it kind of felt like a more exciting episode, and I think again, this is the thing about it being 45 minutes long. It felt a lot punchier.
Right.
It it's you had the not just Journey Blue, but it was Uncle. It was his spaceship, the Aristotle. Which and we perhaps need to look at the name of the ships at some point, seeing as they always seem to have some reason behind choosing those.
Indeed.
The brother was there as well, so this is like the Blue family fighting on this spaceship, and we know about the whole thing with Danny Pink as well, and it's the one that kind of it's the one that gets the brain running. I I like the Star Trek references. I assume that they were deliberate because
I would hope so.
yeah, I was about to say otherwise someone really needs to get fired. And again, I mean. I never feel that Doctor Who is at its finest when it's doing the future stories, the space-based stories,
Hmm.
um, because you can do a lot in a situation that's completely unfamiliar to the audience. That's not to say there haven't been some great ones. There have. They've done some awesome ones, but this was this was one of the better space episodes, one of the better Dalek episodes. It didn't quite have the emotional pull of Eccleston's, but Capaldi hasn't settled into that character enough yet to make that happen. I don't think.
Agreed.
Um, I think. I mean, Eccleston could actually genuinely coax a moistening of the eyes in some of his bigger moments in his series, and
Hmm.
Capaldi will do. I can guarantee it, but
Yes.
just not yet. Um, Again, good performances. I actually genuinely loved, and it's not just because I like other stuff she does, but Zoe Ashton I thought was brilliant in it. Um, it's good, but I'm looking forward to doing the sort of the old Doctor Who stuff, the small self-contained stories, preferably set in the past or in the present rather than the future ones.
I
It
have a
kind of got
feeling you
me
might.
ready for it.
I was going to say, I have a feeling you might like the next episode then,
I was
perhaps.
about to say, as we record, I know you should never reference time when recording a podcast, but
Right.
in just under an hour, I shall no doubt be finding out what happens in episode 3, involving, I think, a trip to Nottingham, or as you guys call it, Nottingham.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
thank you, sir. Yes.
that's fine. That's fine. I mean, you're wrong. Um, and it's Robin Hood, not Robin Hood. Just some small details. Um, just saying.
I feel so
Uh,
ashamed
the,
over here. Yeah.
the hate mails. No, I'm building it up. I'm just giving listeners every reason to be abusive to me. So anyway, yeah, it was a good episode. I think it's heading in the right direction. I like the fact that they've sort of started the cogs whirring, and you can't avoid the moment that keeps coming back into my head is Michelle Gomez's what, maybe 15 seconds possibly in this
Yes.
episode. I think. Um, Again, she's a brilliant comedy actress as well, and she's very good in this. And we kind of there's enough on the internet to see where this is going with her character. So I guess if people don't want to partake in that, then this is skip forward. But I
Yeah.
think at this point, 2 episodes in, we've got enough information about Missy to put some stuff together here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have definitely been putting things. Well, okay. First, before I hop into my thing, how about you just
Mm.
give it a score? Where
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
think
yeah.
this lands?
Um, I'm gonna give this 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I was also going to give it 4, so
Okay.
that works out good. Yeah, you're totally right. I think it kind of lacked the emotional punch of Eccleston's first Dalek episode, but as you said, Capaldi is still kind of figuring out I mean, I don't think Matt Smith really came into his own until after his first series for me. Like,
Oh, definitely.
I
Yeah.
think he got into a real groove after that. First season was out of the way, so yeah, I mean, I'm feeling from him, but yeah, at the same time, he's still kind of, exploring who he wants that character to be. And I feel like it's underselling it a little bit to talk about it like that. It's not that it did have less emotional punch, but that's not to say it was not really well done.
Well, it was probably intentional. I guess let's give the writers the benefit of the doubt and presume that
Yes.
we're not in touch with this doctor's emotional side yet because he isn't yet.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, you know,
But yeah, I'd also give it a 4. There's really nothing in this episode that really stood out to me nearly as much as and that's not always a bad thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's good if there's really nothing that sticks out. If it was just a good, fun adventure that had a good story to it and really revealed something of importance, then I'm totally happy with that episode. I'm sure there will be episodes where something will totally stand out to me and be like, that was incredible or that was horrible. I can't believe I completely glossed over the thing that I hated most about Deep Breath. I think I complained to my I complained to my hetero life mate that she because she is a big fan of the show as well, and I've kind of converted her into watching the show. But yeah, she kind of watches it and doesn't pay attention. I pay really close attention. Unfortunately, it's some sort of disease that geeks have. And there was that scene where Vastra kind of knocks the doctor out, puts him to sleep, and they insert the most Looney Tunes like just sound effect, and
Yeah,
it totally threw me. It's like they didn't do that at its, they had like farting Slovenes, and they didn't really put cartoony sounds in there so much.
yeah.
That really stuck out to me as like a really weird choice.
I think it's actually something that's been a problem for a little while on Doctor Who is that I mean we were talking about the score earlier on, and so much attention is paid to that. We know how much attention is paid to the graphics and
Yeah.
to the writing side of it. But actually, I think some of the post production sound work on it is actually at times it's just bloody awful.
Yeah, the sound design does not stand out as one of the better aspects of the
Yeah,
show.
you're right. It can be distracting. That was quite a good example of it, actually.
That
I
was a low
noticed it as
point for me.
well. Yeah,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
a low point for me. Usually, for me, sound design is working at its peak when you don't notice anything,
Yeah.
when nothing is really sticking out. That's to me, that's like good visual effects. If nothing is really sticking out to you,
Hmm.
if it's kind of just there, then it's probably well made. But when something just sticks out that far, I mean, it took me so out of it for a second. I'm like, did I just hear that sound? Like,
Mm.
was that some? Did like my phone make a sound, or what? It just really did feel out of place. And even for Doctor Who, I don't really remember anything that kind of cartoony sounding that just stuck out to me so much. But they didn't do it in this episode, so hopefully somebody just accidentally stuck the wrong sound file in, and it just got past all of the previews that people watched. And perhaps they're not going to do anything like that going forward. We should, before we get going, talk about the big overarching
Yeah,
thing this season is probably going to be Missy and
yeah.
the Nether Space, or whatever they're calling it, Paradise, or whatever they want to choose. And clearly, because it is a mysterious character whose intentions and person has not been fully revealed, there has literally been, I think, every person who has or has not been on Doctor Who in a very long time is being considered for this person. I mean, I've heard we talked about the Ronnie earlier. I've heard people talk about that character because she was a female renegade Time Lord.
She
Um,
was awesome as well. Kato
yes,
Mara, that was who played her.
yes.
Um, yeah.
I've heard people, go for the really easy of Missy could be short for mistress, which is the feminine of master.
Hmm.
I've heard that, and they've also said that while we haven't seen an on-screen regeneration sex change, they've I believe it's been mentioned that it
Oh
has
God,
happened.
shall I be a slight geek and say, technically speaking, we have,
Okay.
because it was a completely non-canon, of course. But Joanna Lumley was very briefly the Doctor
Oh, there you go.
in I think a Children in Need episode that
Oh,
they did.
yes, yes, one of the charity episodes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
in fairness, we've had Rowan Atkinson and various other people, but yeah, Joanna Lumley was the first sex change Doctor, to my knowledge. But anyway, yeah.
That's close enough for me for to make it count that it can happen.
Now,
Um,
what about the Neil Gaiman side of it? So Neil Gaiman wrote a couple of episodes
yes,
of this, and he's friends with Moffat. The there's a theory, and I'm not overly familiar with the whole Sandman thing, but there's a lot of people saying that she is Death from Sandman because, of course, Death, who is apparently the same character, or certainly a very similar character to the one in the Doctor Who books series and the audio books. There's an
right.
episode called Master, which has a character called Death in it, and the Doctor. I think I'm only vaguely familiar with it, but I think the Doctor kills somebody by accident, um, as the first Doctor, I think it is, and makes a deal thereafter with Death about maybe something to do with being accountable eventually or something.
Right.
And there does seem to be some support for that because the I don't know. I mean, it's difficult because there's the two kind of big theories that keep coming out is you've got that, but of course we've seen Missy before in since the reboot. A lot of people were suggesting that she's the one who is. Do you remember in Nightmare in Silver,
I
the one I
do.
was talking about a minute ago? Yeah. So
Yes.
Missy is the oh, what on earth did they call them now? The Punishment Platoon
Yes. Yes.
member
Yeah.
in what was it, Hedgwick's World of Wonders.
Yes.
So now she discovers a Cyberman. She hides, but the Cyberman, we don't actually, I don't think we see her demise, but the Cyberman's hand detaches and attacks her.
Yes.
Now, this is where we get to spoiler territory, of course, is that you may have seen the photographs of Capaldi and Michelle Gomez filming what appears to be the series finale in the UK.
I have
On
indeed
the
with Cybermen, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely, and you've got Michelle Gomez's character stood there in front of an army of Cybermen, um, and she seems to be her character's point seems to be dealing with people whose deaths are the consequence of the Doctor,
Right.
but she has an affection for him, which um, it's kind of difficult to square up. I mean, it's I have to say it's almost certainly one of those two routes, and of course, death in the deal with death thing in the episode. The audiobook episode of Doctor Who, where that appears, that episode is called Master and
Right.
relates to the Master. So
Right. And
I don't know.
it wouldn't surprise me because the first time the Master returned in the reboot,
Mm,
nobody knew he was the Master until he knew he was the Master. So it was, it was one of those things that he was essentially a background character for a whole of an episode
yeah,
until near the very end, and you're like, holy shit, that's the Master.
yeah.
So it could be that she is that character and maybe is the Master too. I personally, I mean, it's TV and it's a very popular show with a large fan base. They're pretty much damned if they do or damned if they don't.
Oh yeah, for
If it's the
sure.
Master,
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of people that are like, yeah, awesome, the Master. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, yay, awesome, the Master is a girl now. That's also cool. And then you're going to get a bunch of people like, why can't they do something original?
Well,
Uh,
this is it. I mean, this is why the Rani is so much of a better. It's a more enticing idea because the Rani is,
right.
and she was a naughty time lady, I guess.
Right.
I don't know what that right term is. She was badly behaved, but she was camp as tits,
Yeah.
and it was funny. It was I mean, Kate O'Mara can't help that. That's how she is.
Right.
Um, but here, Michelle Gomez. At the moment, we've only seen the sort of slightly playful but little bit sinister, very severe looking side of her.
Yes.
Michelle Gomez, and again, I don't know if it's a show that made its way to the States, Green Wing.
No,
Um,
no, it has not.
all right, it's worth looking up. I'm sure there are various ways that you can do that. But if you see her in that, I mean, it's a crazy, crazy show.
Yeah.
But she does comedy so well, and it's kind of subversive, slightly dark comedy. The idea of her as a renegade Time Lord is desperately appealing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I can't say unfortunately. I'm sure it'll be great, but it looks to me like this is a callback to the character we've met called Missy, and the fact that she was upgraded
The
by the
Cybermen.
Cybermen. Yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to be a callback to. But then again, I've referenced it already in this episode. I'm stabbing wildly in the dark with these, but the last time we saw the Doctor held accountable for the various deaths, of course, was the missing stuff from Netflix, Trial of a Time Lord, Colin Baker.
Right.
That was, this was the Council of Gallifrey trying him for all of the people who've died and him justifying it in the name of all the people he saved.
Right.
She does seem to be keeping a tally. And I
Indeed.
wonder maybe when she asked, did you fall or were you pushed? When she asked that of half-faced mum
Right.
in deep breath, it did feel like it was more than a passing inquiry.
Indeed. Yeah, it seems like it can go in a lot of directions. And the way Doctor Who operates in the first place, I know a lot of people use that, why can't they do something original? As a Star Trek fan, I think I've heard that endlessly since the last movie came out.
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard everything from why can't it be more original to I can't believe they copied Wrath of Khan. Which God, don't even get me started on that argument again. But um, yeah, I mean, the beauty of Doctor Who is that they can, if they wanted to, they could do the Master as a woman, and to me, that's not, that's not them being unoriginal. That's them doing the Master as a woman, and it's a completely different character who is played by a different person who is played in a different way. I mean, to me, screw the name. That's a fresh take and a fresh performance. That's fine with me. Being, there's other ways they could be, unoriginal, and the fact that if they can keep anything original after 50 years of television
Mhm.
is in and of its own right. You've got to look past stuff. If I wanted all those Star Trek to be original, I could never watch any of it. I've lost track of how many Voyager episodes took from a next gen episode that maybe took from an original series episode. I mean, there, for God's sakes, there's original series movies that took from original series episodes. For God's sakes,
Absolutely.
they started borrowing before there was even a next generation.
But the stuff
Uh,
is with that is you get the sort of direct, kind of theft from their own
right, right,
material. But equally, that's the stuff that I mean, everyone loves a callback episode.
yeah,
So when you see to go with the Star Trek thing, sorry Whovians, but when you see the bridge crew or the command crew of DS9 battling behind the scenes with tribbles.
right.
Whilst Kirk and Spock are dealing with them at the
That's
same time. I
amazing.
mean, that's an awesome episode. Um, and I'm kind of okay with it, but I do see I do wonder whether they're not recognizing that there's a lack of constraint with Doctor Who because of course I mean the whole genius of Doctor Who is that literally anything is possible.
Right.
It's kind of unique in sci-fi in that respect, I think, because
Um,
you can do so much with it.
yeah.
But here, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say the whole the I mean it's become a meme upon itself within the fan base, but the whole Tenant explanation of wibbly wobbly timey wimey
Yeah,
is very apt. I mean the show can go anywhere, it can do anything. Um, Most any other show would get really shit on for constantly contradicting itself, but
yeah.
with this show it kind of works. Like they can I mean, there's obviously a point where they will hit a wall if they try to take it too far, but compared to
Well,
most other shows, they have a lot more leeway to play around. They have a much larger sandbox.
but this is where the thing is, isn't it? Is that even a sandbox has got rules, and
Yeah.
here, I think the mental block that's always existed with, why is the Doctor's next regeneration not going to be female, or black as well? So, in
Right.
the
Right.
'80s, I remember Sylvester McCoy regeneration. That was a question being asked then as well. But I think you've got to remember, in terms of the gender thing, at least, that um, the thing about Doctor Who is whenever it sort of does one of these big bold moves, it always then explains itself. So of course, if you've hit regeneration 12.5, I guess,
Right.
of the Doctor, and at no point has he been within canon anyway female, you've then got to deal with the question of why not. Um,
Yeah.
and that's something you can't gloss over. So, but equally, as much as you may feel constrained by that, I don't see why you should be constrained to the idea that, the only female Time Lord of any note in history was the Rani,
Right.
or the woman from the OxoCube adverts in the '80s who played the leader of the Gallifreyan Council.
Yeah.
But bizarre British reference.
I was gonna say,
But
yeah,
the
you're really digging deep. That's a deep cut right there for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, I mean, why is the only villainous, out and out villainous, crazy Time Lord the Master? I mean, that doesn't have to be the case.
Right.
Um, that I gather there were quite a lot of them at some point.
Yeah.
So, and I think also we do know. I mean, we barely look into the Gallifreyan stuff. I mean, every now and again, a couple of series will pass, and there'll be a little bit more information about it, and the books deal with it a lot more. But I think there were a lot of assholes amongst the Time Lords.
Oh yes. I mean,
The reason why they were at loggerheads with the Daleks,
yeah.
there's a reason for that. So I kind of think, it would be nice to see something original here. This is why I like the idea that, if they're going to reference it, reference Missy, who we've seen, who's got a backstory and a motive
Right.
and everything else, and bring that to the fore. And don't redo the Trial of the
Right.
Time Lord story. Do something else. And the little thing that gives me hope about it is this. She refers to herself, well, she refers to the Doctor as her boyfriend. That's interesting. But the other thing she
Right.
does is she is clearly going to be the person who is who's repeatedly pushing Clara and the Doctor back together.
Right.
She's the one who gives the phone number, isn't she? Let's
Yes.
be clear about
Yep.
that. She is going to be the one pushing them back together. I feel that's fairly obvious already.
Yes.
So I'm I'm kind of thinking maybe they're not going to be quite so blunt and quite so cliched as to, make a something we've already seen. I'd like the back reference maybe to the only other character I can think of called Missy in the whole franchise,
Yeah.
but I don't want it. I don't want them to take Route One now. I want them to do something interesting with it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting for sure where they take it, and obviously, even with your theory of it being based off of the previous Missy that we were introduced to, obviously, the whole "did my boyfriend treat you badly" thing definitely puts a spin on it for sure. and raises some questions. And luckily, I think we're going to get answers to it. It's not going to be some Damon Lindelof show where he gives us some sort of gigantic question that he has no intention of ever answering. Which, by the way, people, if you ever watch a Lindelof show, you should just know going in that is the basic premise. I'm not saying it's going to ruin things. I was able to enjoy Lost, and from what I've seen
Oh,
of the from what I was able to see of the leftovers so far, it's also fine. But you have to go in knowing ahead of time that any big question that is asked, you will not receive an answer to. You need to know that he's very good at coming up with very good questions, but is not as good as delivering an answer. I think that's the problem that he has run into is
yeah,
that
for
it's very
sure.
easy to come up with a very interesting premise, but it is also at the same time far more difficult to come up with an answer to that premise that's going to make people feel happy.
What
Um,
was the parody of that show called Lost Interest, wasn't it?
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I binged it on Netflix. I watched it way after the series was over, so I didn't have the letdown that people felt of having to wait for months and months for new episodes, and then I was able to kind of cruise through at my own pace. And at that pace, yeah, it wasn't that bad. I could see why people really disliked the show, especially as it went on, and especially how it ended. But
Hmm.
going into it knowing all of that stuff in advance, that's I guess that's the beauty of hindsight because I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see it, but it didn't really bother me that much. But then again, I knew everything and heard everything and read everything there was to read. However, that's not going to be the case here. I'm sure we'll probably get an answer.
That wouldn't be
Obviously,
Moffat's style, I don't think.
no,
And
he's usually pretty good at delivering
he likes the
the
money
answer.
shot at the end. He likes the
Yeah.
payoff. He likes everyone to know how jolly clever he is. I think it's fair to
Even
say.
even if sometimes it doesn't always. I remember kind of very vividly when they answered a lot of the silence will fall questions,
Hmm.
and those did not feel, to me anyway, that did not feel as like the answer I was really looking for. I guess because they kind of moved past it so quick. They're basically like, okay, this little group of our church went off and tried to blow. That was basically the whole seventh season, was
Yeah,
this
yeah.
group just splintered off. And I thought there was going to
It
be a
was no
much
Bad Wolf, was it?
right. I was expecting like a much bigger answer, and they're like, no, the answer wasn't that big. I mean, it made sense. Sure, it made sense, but I was expecting it to be some grand thing that they're going to. They're like, and he's like, oh, so those are the people that blew up my TARDIS. They're like, yep, those are the people. And they kind of just moved on from there. And I'm like, that was the answer. I'm like, well, they gave us an answer, I guess, but that was the answer. I guess I was expecting a bit more. But yeah, I really see a lot more of the cleverness come through in Sherlock. From me,
Oh yeah.
like, just absolutely crazily weaved stories and stuff. Not that it's not in Doctor Who, but I think it's kept a little bit simpler in Doctor Who. But yeah, I'm expecting an answer here, and I'm not really sure what I'm expecting at this point. I think I've just reserved myself to. I just want it to be good. If it's good, I'm happy.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think my bottom line is if Missy turns out to be God and this is heaven and they go back to the because well no they attempted that with
it's Battlestar Galactica all over again.
yeah well also well, even with Doctor Who we had the devil of course didn't we
Yeah, yeah.
going back to can't remember when that was but
Talking about
I think
the Tenant episode near the end of his,
yeah that's right
or that wasn't
but
near the end of his. I don't know.
no it was in fact it was somewhere near the start of it but I think that would piss me off because that would just be a big letdown.
It
And
feels
I
like
know they've referenced
that's a
it.
cheap way out. Usually, I think.
Yeah, they've hinted references to heaven. They refer to the promised land. Um, they've done all of that, and I just think this is sci-fi, and I'm not sure. And crikey, let's just see how many potential hate points I can raise here. I'm just not sure that God's got much place in sci-fi.
It really doesn't. We don't want to go into a whole
About
theological
to say
discussion.
that shit's gonna kick off. Yeah.
But as a Star Trek fan, that's kind of one of those things. Even though there are some contradictory moments within the original series, once you get past the original series, they kind of make it clear that organized religion, at least on Earth, is kind of a thing of the past, and
Yeah.
it doesn't really. And I think in a lot of ways, I don't think they were. In some ways, I think maybe they're doing that to be like, this stuff is archaic, and you're an idiot for believing it. But in some other ways, I think they make it clear because they think as writers that that's too easy of a way out. I mean, there's obviously, there's Deus Ex
You've
Machina.
got the Q, I suppose,
Right,
in
right,
Star
right.
Trek, which is the closest thing to, well, they are an omnipotent entity, but yeah, I mean, and I think, to be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that occasionally they give rise to some good comedy, and that's of course how we first met the Borg and stuff, but for those factors, do you know what, the Q are so out of place in that universe.
So yeah, here's where we're gonna get the hate mail because people are like, "Yeah, I tuned in for a Doctor Who podcast, and you guys
Sorry,
spent the
guys.
last 10 minutes to talk about Star Trek." Um, all right, so Ben, do you want to? Because you do a couple of other podcasts, do you want to put out some plugs for there in case people are people are interested in British hockey or in in British law?
Certainly. Well, listeners, in the unlikely event that you find yourself interested in stories that are in the, well, mainly British media about, well, mainly British people involved with, well, the law of England and Wales. Well, if in case you're interested in any of those things, then I have a show called Northpod Law, which is available on iTunes and all the usual places. And although, we have some fun on there, and we
Sure.
we kind of point out, sometimes we have to spell out that the press either don't know their arse from their elbow when it comes to the law, or far more frequently are deliberately trying to tell people things that aren't correct just to make everyone feel unhappy. So we explore that a little bit. The other show, as you quite rightly say, is the probably even niche world of
Yes.
British ice hockey. I run a show called the Official Manchester Phoenix Podcast. Manchester Phoenix are an ice hockey team based in Manchester in the UK, run by Tony Hand, MBE. He might be known to some hockey geeks in the US because he was the first British player drafted by an NHL side
Yeah.
many years ago. And that show starts tomorrow. In fact, rather weirdly, we've just about to start the new season. And again, it was once described by a fan of another team on, I think, iTunes, it might have been Facebook, as a bunch of people stood in a car park laughing at their own jokes. I didn't like it. 1 star.
Oh, he should not listen to the Cinema Geekly podcast then
I was,
either.
I was about to say we've been trying to live up to that ever since. I'm impressed they found jokes. I just wanted to write back and say, "Are you sure?"
Yeah,
But we start with a parody at the start of this season, as we always do, and I've been recording it today.
excellent.
So go and have a laugh anyway, and then send us abusive emails. That'll be
No,
fun.
for sure.
Mm.
And you're on Twitter at what? It's Ben Knight. Is that the Twitter account?
Yeah, that's me. Night with a K. Yeah.
If people want to check out Twitter, nobody seems to check out Twitter when we plug Twitter. I think I have the highest following count of any of the other guys on Twitter, and
Well,
that's only
well, well,
because
Anthony, where can people find you on Twitter?
well, I'm on Twitter at Anthony S. Lewis. And I'm currently fluctuating between 199 and 200 followers.
Okay,
It
Cinema
seems to.
Geekly fans, you don't know me, but all right, let's get this up now. What number are we setting as a target for the next time we do a Doctor Who episode?
You know what? To be perfectly honest with you, I think I'd just like to keep it at 200 for maybe a couple of days. I've literally the last few days it's been going up and down between 199 and 200. I don't know what it is about what I'm posting because I don't post a lot on Twitter, but there must be
You're
something
posting
that I'm
something like
doing.
really mildly controversial to a really indecisive. I know what it is. I reckon what you've got. Have you been recently commenting about the Scottish independence debate? Because I think you've got an either way voter there who's just not sure. And
I
you're
have
saying
not,
you're
but
saying shit. You're talking about Capaldi now. I mean, this might get him interested.
there you go. Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
they do land in Glasgow as well in the first episode. So, yeah, perhaps I don't know. Honestly, I'm not really sure what it is. For all I know, it could be one of those robot accounts that is following me and unfollowing me, and I have no idea. But yeah, I honestly I don't really have any goals for Twitter. My goals, I guess, for the time being, I'm going to focus those goals on the Patreon thing, which we literally just opened. So patreon.com/cinemageekly, and people can start helping us there for as little as $1 a month, and we've got some perks, including premium content. Which this podcast, while this first episode is free, is also going to be available on the premium website, which we're opening up. It's going to be an extension of the main website that's going to just contain the premium content, and we're going to open that up in a couple of days. I just got to put the finishing touches on it. It's going to be a much less extensive website, just enough to contain the content and just enough to contain the information needed for people to be able to log in and access it. Um,
I've
but
just
yeah,
had a look on that. I mean, Patreon's a fantastic service. I
yeah,
occasionally give on Patreon for Tom Merritt's podcast that he
yeah, yeah. There
does,
you go.
Daily Tech News Show, and I think he's making some good money out of that now, and it's nice because he produces a really quality product. Cinema Geekly produces a quality product too, and
See, there you go. I mean, I wouldn't put us on the
nicely
same
done.
level as maybe Tom Merritt or.
The guy's overrated. Ask Leo Laporte. It's fine.
There you go. I can't believe we're dropping a Leo Laporte reference also on here.
The
That's incredible.
president of the internet, of course, we have to
Yes,
mention.
absolutely. Um, I guess I would feel the need to maybe plug Leo's Twitch channel, but I think everyone on the internet is already aware of it, so there's really no
I
need.
think they're there already. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's the goal ultimately is to and we're not even right now. We're not even looking to be self-sustaining. To say nothing of making a living off of it. At some point, that would be maybe the greatest thing ever. I remember when Chris Hardwick's Nerdist podcast was just him and his friends bullshitting, and now he has a an empire essentially of nerddom. And I don't even ever expect to reach those lengths, but we're trying to aim the bar real low. And right now, we're just looking to gather enough money to help the other guys who do the main podcast get their equipment upgraded some. So we can all sound a little bit better. Ben's already pointed me in the direction of a better audio recording device. So this is what happens when you got somebody who's been podcasting longer than I have. That helped tremendously. So Ben's helping in many ways already.
I'm just a cheapskate, and I found some shit that was free, so it's all good.
But if it works, man, hey, I don't care. Work is. I mean, yes, I feel like a fool for paying for something that provided subpar quality, but I live in America, so I'm constantly buying things that are of subpar quality.
I was about to say, you
Uh,
buy American cars, do you? I mean,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And
actually, you're
so,
from Michigan, aren't you? I can't slag off the motor industry to you guys.
sure. No, you can. There's really not much of one anymore in Michigan. That's long since gone. That was in days of yeah, it was a long time ago. It's just the less said the better.
For listeners to this show who are listening outside of the US,
Yeah.
I know one of the things that people were saying with the t-shirts and so on and the Kickstarter thing
Mhm.
was that some of those services you can't contribute from overseas. I
Yes,
am, as we speak, I am checking whether you can contribute to Patreon abroad, and I think
I believe you
the
can.
answer you can. I do it through through a bank card from the States with somebody I know over there for Tom Merritt show, but I think you can do it with a UK card as well now, which is good. Yeah,
I
you can. There we go.
I do
Yeah.
believe so. Yeah, if anybody's listening to this from outside of the U.S. that would be interested, yeah, the gratitude would be immense if people did. We're happy of any support. We're happy of the people that. I mean, if it wasn't for the people who donated extra money to the booster campaign, I would not even be talking right now whatsoever. My 10-year-old Plantronics headset that I was recording the podcast on before died several weeks ago. And if it was not for the people who donated through even though the booster campaign didn't work out because maybe it was an ill-advised T-shirt design, perhaps I don't know.
I was
But
going to say that was a curious choice, if you don't mind me saying.
yeah,
It's kind
essentially,
of like an argument for fist across America.
yeah. I mean,
'Cause
essentially, we chose something that made us laugh, which may not necessarily, like my mom might want to help us out, but she doesn't necessarily want to wear a shirt that says ham-fisted on it. So yeah,
it has
maybe
unfortunate connotations.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it was an ill-advised T-shirt design, perhaps. But people did have the option to donate outside of their purchase, and enough people did, and we got that money irregardless. And as a result, yeah, new podcasting equipment for me. So yeah, I'm telling you right now from personal experience, the amount of gratitude. I'm usually a very humble person anyway, and I'm the last person to congratulate me on anything. So yeah, this is all you guys. So everybody who donated money to help get this thing back going for me. Yeah, I'm very happy. So if anybody
Well,
else wants to do it, very happy as well.
I've just become your first Patreon patron just now from the UK using a UK card. And it
Boom.
was I think it took like maybe 20 seconds, and that's because I wasn't really paying attention.
There you go.
Uh,
Look at
I I wasn't paying attention, which means I may now have sponsored you $50 a month. So
that.
if if I have, you may find your amount goes down next month. Anyway, Let's not. Well, let's
Yeah,
move on.
and we should mention before we close out the show, the way that works is yes, it is monthly, but you can cancel at any time. So if you just want to do it for a month, if you just want to do like the $20 and get the exclusive content for a year and grab a T-shirt or something, there you go. If you don't want any of those things and just want to give us money, you don't care about the perks or any of that other stuff, they give you that option as well. So yeah, and it's starting as low as $1. I think at $1 we give you we're going to give you 2 weeks of the exclusive podcasting, and everything after that is you get it monthly for the entire month.
That's pretty
So yeah,
cool.
but you can start really super low for 4 quarters. You can get a couple weeks of exclusive podcasting of the quality of this particular one that you're listening to right now. Whether it's good or bad, I have no idea. People, I'm sure, will tell us the quality of the show. But yeah, Ben will hopefully come back as frequently as he can. Obviously, the time difference. I mean, we had to figuratively bend space and time to make this happen.
Wibbly
Uh,
wobbly, timey-wimey, 12 minutes to Doctor Who in the UK right now, though. So,
Oh my God, we're gonna wrap it up. Uh,
whoa.
all right, so next week we're gonna be back. Somebody's gonna be back. Me for sure. Maybe Ben, and probably definitely Aaron De La Osa are gonna be back talking next week's episode, Robot of Sherwood, which I am to understand takes place in Nottingham. So
Well, if you want to say it the way they say it in that city, the correct pronunciation, I'll see if I can get it right.
all right,
Nottingham.
Nottingham. Okay.
Mm,
Leaving out
we'll
a
work
couple
on
of
it.
letters, leaving out a couple of letters there, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah. We have a lot of apostrophes in
okay.
spoken English.
I was going to say, for the people who invented the language, come on, guys. You
Yeah,
invented
yeah,
that
yeah.
language.
Nottingham. Nottingham. Say it with me, listeners. Nottingham.
Nottingham. I'm trying here, Ben. It's not coming
Hmm.
out good. I could do it, but it would just come out like a really bad British accent.
I
And
may come on the next show of this, just like with a little buzzer that I can press each time you and Aaron mispronounce something.
that's going to be a very bad episode. It's just full of buzzer sounds.
It's gonna be terse times ahead, I can tell you. But we'll see how we go.
All right. So for Ben Knight, I'm Anthony Lewis, and we'll be back next week on Who Made Who, Cinema Geekly's Doctor Who podcast, part of Cinema Geekly Premium at cinemageekly.com/premium.